So now we're talking about limited companies and what happens to them when you assign them into your trust. The liabilities that you've been accounting for in their system and crediting those terrorists, let's say, that debt needs settling. And so that's really the debt that we're talking about. It just looks like that in paper format, is what we were just saying. But the real debt is the debt and the on your soul and that's what we're really talking about, remedying and restoring the rights to. By becoming your own official receiver, what you're actually doing, I've got a limited company, I've been paying tax and VAT, I've got an accountant, and I'm going to sack my accountant because you don't need him anymore, her anymore. And because you're going to do it yourself. So this is full accountability. And now if I had known this, would I have continued doing it? No. So I'm at this point now, once I knew this much, it was enough for me to decide I'm not going to do this literally in my name anymore. So you assign the limited company registration number over into your trust and your VAT registration number or unique tax reference number, whatever it is, doesn't matter whether it's a large company, a medium or you're a sole trader, this process is the same. And the last thing that you get your accountant to do before you sack him is to give you like an overview of your business, of the books, trading accounts from beginning to end, and how much tax you've credited this system with. What we do then as a trust, we'll take that amount as working capital. Now we're working the capital that you've created inside there to discharge the liability, the debt that HM government and agencies thereof owe universal law as a collective. And so then you get an adjustment of an account, they get the adjustment of account, and the Companies House has the last filing in there, which is that this account was used as a debt equity swap to discharge this proportion under non-disclosure of the total amount outstanding under non-disclosure, and that goes into Companies House in that company filing. And this is a very good way of being able to give Companies House the evidence that they said that they required, that this was happening that we were the reason why they couldn't dissolve the UK government was because of this debt equity swap of the restoration of rights. And that's what it looks like. So it looks like all your companies being converted into kindness credits, which is the most important bit of any conversation. The other bit is just paperwork and a few credits on a screen, numbers on a screen going from one place to another, that's it. And the real deal, obviously, is how do I go on then as a business using kindness credits? So can you give me an idea, Minister Ven, of the customer worth or what the usual process of the routes market is for the customer with you or the business, running the business?
Okay, so our business is generally business to business. So we bill our clients and they generally, we're VAT registered, so we bill them for, say a week's work or something, and then they'd pay us usually in either 30 or 60 days, depending on the size of the company.
Right. So you just invoice them in another currency, which is kindness credits with so let's say I'm going to normally my business practices, I'm going to send an invoice to another company for 1,000 slave tokens, pounds. And so all you're doing, your invoice is going to say divided by 8. That's the amount in kindness credits. Now, the company that you're dealing with, they don't know anything about kindness credits, do they, at this point? And so they're just looking at how much is that in pounds? Just like they might not know, if I sent an invoice to a company from Australia to England, they might not know on that day how many pounds to an Australian dollar is there. So, and it would be on there. At today's exchange rate, the equivalent in your local currency is that amount of slavery. So they're just going to pay in exactly the same way that they would. Nothing's changed there, except they have been invoiced in kindness credits, which means that that transaction for them can also be the key, the door in for them to be able to convert their business into kindness credits by just simply following those processes and that we talked about, and assigning their company details into Big Blue Asset Management. There's a website that we're just in the process of creating with all of this data. So these companies or legal fictions or let's say councils and the assets of which have been used in this debt equity swap are being re-recorded in these ledger rolls, and it's exactly the same thing for the companies. And you've moved across into kindness credits. So how can I pay you in kindness credits if I've got a company that operates in slave tokens? Well, there's a direct debit procedure that some companies have already got. I don't know if do your companies pay you by direct debit?
No, they just do a bank transfer usually.
Right. So the account that you're paying into needs to be assigned. Obviously, it will be by the same process, or you can use another account, one of our holding accounts. And really, each community needs its own designated holding account to account for the transactions and exchanges that are going on in each community. The last thing that we want, we talked about this on Friday, is centralized control. We can see what that looks like, totalitarianism, even if that's a word. So having that in the hands of the people themselves as a community account means that you're in control of the executing of it, of the assets and resources within it. So and then that's it really.
Okay.
So
and then just close down the company business account.
Yeah.
Bank account, and just keep it as your own personal one and the community one.
Exactly. So there's no, do your customers only use you because of you being VAT registered, do you think?
No, it's not. It's nothing to do with that. It's reputation. Right.
Yeah. So it's not a relevant factor. I have spoken to some people and they've said, well, it's companies only use us because of the VAT that they can discharge.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem to have some kind of influence on bigger companies. And I mean, we've had a lot of very, very large companies contracts in the past, but they've been disappearing. But yeah, it makes a difference with them, but not for the smaller companies.
I mean, this isn't the third layer, if you like, in the pyramid now, with the business side of it. So we deal with the people using legal fictions, and now the people who were using their legal fictions to create a second layer of legal fictions, helping those people understand or comprehend about the economics, the accountancy, all of the things that they thought that was over my head. I'd rather pay somebody $4,000 a year to work this out for me. And even the accountants themselves, they love a good, some of them love a good way of being able to not support. That's their job. Their whole idea of having an accountant was to not support the taxation system to the degree that they implied that you would if you didn't have an accountant. Without an accountant, nothing's been accounted for. It's all under non-disclosure. So there we are, we run along and say, oh, we need an accountant so I can tell the corporate state this, so that it can tax me and my energy there. And so I can pat myself on the back and say, I'm a very good debt slave because I pay my tax. But when you look at where the tax goes, you've just been supporting Halliburton and terrorism with it. So is it not better to take a percentage of that, which you would normally have collected? So on our invoices that we're invoicing the corporations, that's some of them are up there for you to see, there's a ULC tax of 50%. And they were like, God, taxes. Well, it's the universal law tax. You've been breaking universal law, right? That's why we've had to pay tax, because you've encouraged us to break universal law and pay tax for doing it. And so surely universal law, have you paid universal law the tax? And could you ever discharge a liability created from slavery with slave tokens against universal law? You can't, it's impossible. Because the very acts of what it is that we've been doing, and now we know, compounding our own debt using these debt slave tokens, that's what this looks like right at the very end or the beginning of this realization of this, and going, bloody hell, look at the trail that of destruction and corruption and terrorism that we've created unknowingly. And so under the law, I'm obliged to remedy that matter. So I'm accepting the liabilities that I've created up until now with the mindset that I had. It looked like this amount of sweat equity in pounds of slavery flesh. And I'm acknowledging that I credited that system to that degree. It created and facilitated the amount of debt that then went on to be created by HM government against universal law as a community trust. And so, say you paid, I don't know, £600,000 over the last 10 years in tax to HM government, then that amount, in the next 10 years, you're not going to be doing that. So that's at least worth, you not doing that is worth 1.2 million at face value, because of the tax that you've already paid. So and the tax that you're not going to pay now, put that together and let's be generous and let's be realistic about it in reflection to what it is that really would be going on in the background. Because if you'd have paid that 1.2 million with fiat currency, you all know how much more of hypothetical credit you would have created for them by doing that. So you know, we can afford to be very generous in settling slavery. It's not, you know, we want to be able to just do it, which we've already done one rock for that, thanks, this rock here. So really now it's just restoring the rights of the minds of the people who are inhabiting the rock and saying, okay, here I am in my lifetime, this is an exemplification of my terrorism of myself and my community in debt slavery, the supporting of my own slavery, and it looks like this in pounds. Okay, so we accept that. It's not going to happen, and we're remedying the matter using our equity, our collateral. We peacefully surrendered the right of use of all of our rights, where back to universal law. And so that exchange of that means that those charges and that debt is settled. And so when obviously Companies House said, you know, till the 21st of June, we need to provide more evidence. This is the evidence. This is you and your companies going in there in accordance with Uniform Commercial Code filing 2020-056-5342-1. The creditors of this legal fiction have retired, and here's the settlement and the deed of acknowledgement. And that's it. And that's the, yes, there's a quiet title, and this is what it looks like by the doing of the people. It's all very well, this is where we're different now, because many people have said, oh, the government's bankrupt, somebody bankrupted America, and it still carried on because the people weren't taught what that meant. And so because people are bothering to learn this, you can actually put it into practice. Oh, that's what this looks like now. Okay, I get the paper bit, or I don't get the paper bit, but you do get the practicing part of it. So you're immediately more competitive as a as a company anywhere on any platform, because immediately your transactions are tax-free. You send out a signal to other people, they're scratching their head thinking, how is it possible that their service is so cheap? Well, because of this. I'm not in competition with you anymore, guys. I want to provide a service. In fact, I'm so cheap that I do 5 hours a week, and it gives me everything that I thought that I needed to charge these people who come through my door 100 quid. Now it's only 20. I only need that much to just cover me for the things that my community are not supporting me in kindness credits yet. So it's all part of this lovely network, and it's discharging the debt. So where we talked about separating the equity and the titles. 2 circles on a piece of paper, titles and equity inside there. So your intellectual property, all your intangible asset, the thing that you are, that is indefinable, is in there. And everything that comes after that is made from that. That's universal law. So that's your equity. So you're just removing that from the hands of putting it into these agents, literally, and saying, I don't know what I'm doing with this thing that I am, that I don't know. I don't know, because I haven't bothered to learn. Now people are bothering to learn. You don't need that. You don't need that, whoever that is, to go to and say, I need to pay you slave tokens for you to do the thing that I thought I didn't know how to do. It's already done because it was fiction. You didn't really need to do all that. That's the quietening of the presumption of legal fiction. It doesn't exist. Just a few pieces of paper. That's it. There you go. Okay. Some people need more pieces of paper. Some people, just pick up a rock and go to hell with it. I'll pay my tax in rocks. So this, I haven't quite explained. That would be the settlement for any charges. Let's say, as a company, then they might turn around and say, there's an outstanding liability. Here you are. Here's your share. We're settling your debt, even though we know you don't exist. We're helping you settle the debt that the indebted mind in you, the agent of the private corporation, thinks that there is. This debt was settled with by this means. This is your share of the rock too. There you go. Do you still need to persecute people for profit if you've got your share of the rock back in your hands? No. So.
Okay.
Have you got any more questions about that?
No, not with that. It's just I think we need to just sort out the other side of it that you mentioned that connected to that.
Yeah, so the equity, first of all, move the equity out of the being implied to be in the hands of the legal title. So, and how you do that is you simply send over the longitude and latitude and the address, and we'll give that a market value and its right of use that you're using to discharge part of the debt, and then the title goes into the trust, your family trust name, at the company's house, if they want to, a company's house, at land registry, if they want to or not, it's not relevant because it's all recorded in the website of Big Blue Asset Management.rocks. It's bbam.rocks, which is where you're going to be able to find that it's a new point of reference. Whether you're looking for a number plate of a minister's conveyance, or whether you're looking to see whether it's insured, whether it's got surety, or whether it's details about a restoration of rights that's gone, or whether you'd like to check the reassigning in your local community, how's it going, off this asset list that's recorded there, where your local kindness credit outlet is. And so it's bringing together all of these different pieces of data, and it's the equivalent of gov.uk, except you've got people there who are willing to take the liability if the liability ever exists under universal law, because it doesn't. And they, under universal law and within universal law, these people broke it. And so here's my sign of nature, whatever that might be. In that instance, I will put my DNA in a pot that has got the jurisdiction of universal law, because that's really where everything else comes from. So the writs and things that we were talking about the other night, they only stopped getting served because nobody would stand surety to it, because the trusts had been used to discharge the banks and bail them out, or the beginning of the end of the benefit system, and as a trust, as a nation using trust in 1980 in England, because nobody had any surety. It was all gone. So acting on I'm acting completely out of the law. I'm acting on my own liability if I put my sign of nature on this document. That's why those documents aren't signed. And we've all accepted that. And now we're not. We're saying, okay, can we all agree that if you've got universal law standing surety to you, and as long as you're administering that, then you've caused no loss, harm, or damage. A 10-year-old can minister the law. A 7-year-old, even younger, they know the difference between right and wrong more so, and exemplify it more so than we do. So the law is not difficult, and we just need to say, and that by all that I am, I consent to that. So the properties being used as the right of use is given the value and discharged against the debt, and the mortgage, any charges are discharged in that action, in that deed. And then obviously nobody can administer MVN at that property with all the liabilities discharged. So the process is the longitude and latitude, and that's it. And we can start with that.
Excellent, I'll do that.
Lovely. Oh, I'm sorry, I do waffle on sometimes. You need to say, oh, you're waffling at me, Minister.
No, well, it's gone over my head a bit, but I think I just need to do it step by step. So once I've done something, then I understand it in the sections, and then we'll get there. We'll get there.
Of course, yeah. This is what we're saying. It's absolutely no point in giving people that even the restoration of rights meetings that we had last night with people in there who haven't done these steps completely. That's why they set out like this. Do those steps, and then suddenly the next bit would be so obvious.
Yeah.
That's all. We've just got to shut these doors. Right. So I'm going to go now. Thank you.